The Penguin and the Wolf by Katathi. On the cold, barren land of the land known as Antarctica, numerous animals conglomerated near a small pool of frozen water, where it seemed like the animals of the land had met up to mingle with the other animals. Penguins in particular dominated the population of the conglomeration, as the other animals of seals and different species of Arctic birds were the other portions of the mingling. The penguins seemed to keep to themselves, as the seal and birds communicated between each other to discuss the current state of the Arctic, as there were sightings from some of the albatross that there was an unknown species of animal approaching the Arctic from the north. The seals discussed about staying as far away from the unknown animal as possible, just to avoid a possible predator to their ecosystem, while the albatross and cormorants wanted to investigate further to see why there was a single new animal in the Arctic of all places. The penguins did not seem interested in the discussion of the other animals, as the vast majority of penguins were busy talking amongst themselves about their own status in the Arctic, such as their family heritage, and which species were better overall, and how the emperor species of penguin had been causing a commotion these past few weeks. Out of all the penguins, however, a single female Adelie penguin began to listen in on the discussion of the seals and the birds, intrigued by the new animal that was approaching the barren wasteland of the Arctic. At last, some sort of excitement was going to happen in the Arctic for once, rather than a pair of seals wrestling for a woman, or the penguins waging territorial war on each other because the fish are in a particular spot in the week. Was a chance for some excitement, as this excitement means that a new visitor will be in the Arctic, one that is not native to the lands of snow and ice. While the other penguins bickered, the single Adelie penguin thought heavily on what the new animal was like, and what would happen to it once it arrived in the Arctic. As the mingling came to a close, a few of the cormorants decided to fly ahead to where the sightings of the new animal were, just to see if the new animal had arrived yet. The Adelie penguin smiled, thinking she may meet a new friend, somebody who is different than everyone else that currently lives in the Arctic, so she waited patiently for the cormorants to return. As she waited, a few male emperor and Adelie penguins approached her, taunting her and overall picking on her for listening to the seals and birds, and not focusing on the supreme power of the penguins. She shrugged them off as she had always done before, not letting their words get to her like they have tried in the past. One of the emperor penguins grew irritated of the ignorance the female Adelie penguin showed, so he started to push her around and make fun of her for being different than the other penguins. The female Adelie penguin took the words and constant nagging and just continued to not express any emotion to the other penguins. Irritated, the male penguins gathered and discussed more of what to do in order to stop her from continuing to wait for the new animal. Just as they came to the plan to take her away from the spot and push her in the water to distract her, the cormorants returned, shrieking that the new animal was here. The male penguin, shocked that the speed of the animal that was approaching was faster than expected, and quickly enacted to try to get the female Adelie penguin away from the area. As they grabbed her and were about to move her to the nearby pool of water, a sound was heard from the nearby hill, with the sound seeming to be a really loud yell. As the penguins, the seals that remained, and the birds all turned, there stood a four-legged creature with fur the color of snow. It was quite different than any other creature either of the animals have seen. In fear, the male penguins ran away, not sure how to react to the new animal, as did the seals. The birds and the female Adelie penguin remained, interested in the new animal that stood before them. The birds flew in closer to the animal, in which the response was a quiet glance at the birds, not making a single noise after the yell. The birds began to ask many questions of the newcomer, who merely responded by shaking his head, still refusing to say a word. It wasn't until the female Adelie penguin approached the new animal when he looked interested at her. The birds immediately swarmed around the penguin and began to warn her that the animal had very sharp teeth and might be a predator to penguins, so it may be best to stay away. Overhearing the conversation, the wolf ducked his head in sadness and slowly walked away from the crowd, confusing both the birds and the penguin. The female Adelie penguin glared at the birds, who all flew way back to their homes as the new animal left, leaving just the penguin to try to follow the newcomer. As she followed the newcomer, she noticed the seals were slowly moving closer towards the newcomer as well, not sure how to handle the new animal in their ecosystem. Caution and tension abound. The seals did not know if this animal was friend or foe, and as such, they too warned the female Adelie penguin to watch out for the newcomer, but still she was intrigued. Never once had there been a new animal to the Arctic, let alone a silent animal, that was just unheard of, so she decided, against the words of others, to try to talk to this newcomer. As the newcomer turned around to the sound of snow shuffling behind him, he looked up to see the Adelie penguin looking at him interested. He looked back down in silence and was about to walk away before the penguin told him to stay still. He stopped, but only for a few moments, before looking back at her and asking if there was any other of his kind around in the area. The penguin said that he was the only animal of his kind in the Arctic, as all of the animals had never seen anything like him before, and did not even know what he could be. The newcomer smiled and asked the penguin of what type of animal she thought he was that she knew of, in which she responded with a rare type of seal with fuzz. The newcomer laughed and responded by introducing himself as the wolf. The Adelie penguin introduced herself officially too, as well as a few seals that have approached the wolf as the two talked, believing the wolf to not be harmful to them. The sight of the fangs, however, did scare the rest of the seals off, that felt the wolf to be a predator rather than prey, and run they did. All that remained around the wolf was a few seals and the female Adelie penguin. The penguin smiled at the wolf and pondered if the wolf was a nice animal or a mean one, just based off his personality as a whole. As the wolf slowly sat down and looked down in silence, the penguin concluded the wolf to be friendly, and not interested in eating any of the animals that stood before him. She asked the wolf where he came from, in which he looked towards the north, stating that a few islands that he would travel down led to the Arctic, and this is the furthest he ever had gone, interested in the wildlife that was beyond the islands. The penguin smiled and officially welcomed the wolf to the Arctic, stating that she and the seals believed he would be welcome to the Arctic at any time. The wolf looked in surprise to the animals, unsure of how to respond, in which the penguin questioned him on why he looked so shocked. He explained to the penguin that he used to be part of a pack of wolves before deciding he never fit in with them, and went on his lonesome, being called the Lone Wolf of the Islands by the other packs that would see him. Ashamed by his name, he traveled far away from the packs to try to not be seen, and he even decided not to eat any of the animals along the way just to hide his tracks and appear different to the packs. Unfortunately, the scent and noticeable white fur would always let him be seen, which is why he traveled to the Arctic to hide and live in shame. The penguin looked at the wolf in silence before stating that he is not alone in the Arctic, and that she too is somewhat of a unique animal, as she is different from the other penguins who did not want anything to do with the wolf. The seals behind her chimed in as well, stating that the wolf seemed like a good animal to have around, and would back the wolf up if anything went wrong. The penguin told the wolf that he has new friends in the Arctic, that would be with him till the very end, to which the wolf responded cynically. The wolf did not believe that these animals would be friends to him after one day of meeting him, and said to himself he would just be alone again, just like he always was. The penguin overheard him and told him to stop, stating that she feels like he is a great animal, and that she knows as time goes on he will have more friends in the Arctic than he did the islands. And time did pass after the first meeting. Time passed from days into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. And from that point, when the penguin told him he was a great animal and would have more friends in the Arctic, the truth was with the penguin, as the wolf would take these words and continue to travel to the Arctic to talk with the seals and the penguin herself. Every week he would visit the Arctic, learn about the Arctic and territories around him, learn of the different groups of animals and how each interact with each other. He learned from the seals that the older and the bigger the seals, the more distant they were to newcomers until the newcomers proved themselves, and so the wolf did. The seals accepted him as he protected them from human poachers looking to kill the seals, to which the wolf scared off every single human that had seal hunting tools. He learned from the birds that each different bird species interacts neutrally to each other, but differently to other species. The birds accepted him as he showed them new areas in the islands to reside, as well as places for the birds to eat. The only group that hadn't accepted him as the years rolled by were the penguins. The penguins, all the species of them, refused to talk to or really cooperate with the wolf, as they believed him to be a predator to them and would turn on them at any point. As time would go on, when the wolf tried to prove he wasn't a bad animal, the penguins would ignore him, even convincing the female Adelie penguin that the wolf's first meeting was a facade, which really upset the wolf immensely. As the months turned into years, the female Adelie penguin was able to sneak out to talk to the wolf when he traveled into the Arctic, talking to him about what goes on in her penguin life, in which the wolf was intrigued. She talked about how emperor penguins used her in the past, and how the Gentoo penguins told her to ignore the other species and the wolf. She mentioned how the chinstrap penguins would pick on her every now and again, and how she missed talking to the wolf like she did originally. The wolf would admit when the penguin did that he too missed talking to the penguin. As she seemed to be the only true friend he really had that accepted him immediately, while every other species was cautious. And as the years passed, the wolf and the penguin's friendship grew stronger and stronger, even to the point where nothing could break the friendship the two vastly different animals had. The penguin would have issues with how the emperor penguins used her, to which the wolf gave advice that helped his species in those situations, and she would be grateful to the wolf every time for the advice he supplied. The penguin helped the wolf find food in the Arctic, as she noticed that his willingness to not be seen by the other wolves and the failure to eat much on the island fatigued him. So the penguin showed the wolf how to fish, to which the wolf became a master of shortly after. The friendship was strong between the two, but the test of friendship would be tested soon enough. One night, as most of the penguins, the seals, and the birds were all asleep, the wolf sat at the top of the frozen hill, staring into the moonlight. The wolf took this time to reflect on his time at the Arctic, enjoying the time he spent with the penguin, and the friends he had made with the seals and the different species of birds, and how he felt like he had a place in the world, even if he was a different creature than everyone else. The wolf was not aware, however, that there were still a vast amount of penguins against the wolf being in the Arctic, and fear decided to act up to the wolf. As they approached him silently on the hilltop, they overheard the wolf talking to the moon about how the other wolves haven't learned of his trips to the Arctic, and what awful things may happen if they did. The penguins smiled, a group of evil smiles, and they quietly spoke up behind the wolf, who looked around in shock as to who was talking to him. The penguins, realizing they haven't been spotted, pretended to be the moon, talking straight to the wolf, in which the wolf gazed upwards in awe. He would believe whatever the moon would say, and the evil penguins used that to their advantage. The penguins told the wolf as the moon that the other wolves would be eager, not upset at the new places he had gone, and that he should spread the word to them in order to merge the two ecosystems together. Skeptical, the wolf asked the moon why the other wolves would believe him, as he had left them for being different. The moon asked how the wolf was different, in which the wolf angrily spouted that he was the one who gave respect to the animals he had killed. Many other wolves he had hurt, while the other wolves would carelessly attack and hurt any other animal that stood in their way. The wolf howled that he believed the wolves should be respectful, at the very least to those they hurt intentionally or unintentionally, to which the moon asked if he had ever hurt anyone intentionally, wolf, penguin, seal, or bird. The wolf looked down in shame, stating he had, to which the moon responded with how he has. The wolf stated that to the seals he felt as if he hurt them by being such a menacing figure around them. To the birds he felt as if he was somehow forcing them away from their homes by him showing them new land, believing himself to be the reason why they are gone from their families. Finally, to the penguin he always talked to, because he never felt like he could say what was on his mind around her, and he always watched in pain as she went through painful events on a weekly basis, and that he couldn't be more helpful without spilling the beans. The evening, the evil penguins snickered, believing they had everything they needed to manipulate the wolf into leaving. So as the moon, the penguins told the wolf to go back to the island and tell them about what he has done, and no consequences shall arise. The wolf bowed his head graciously and proceeded to the islands, and as he left, the penguins laughed horrifically behind him. As the next day dawned, the female Adelie penguin woke up early and traveled to the meeting spot where the wolf was to meet her for another day of hanging out, but he wasn't there. Confused, the penguin looked around the area, asking the seals and birds if they had seen him, but to no avail. She then returned to the penguins, asking some of them if they had seen the wolf, and all of them glared at her and said no. Distraught, she went back to the spot and sat there, waiting for the wolf. Countless time passed before a close bird friend, the skua, found her sitting in the snow with her head hanging down sadly. The skua said in a cold tone that she had found something that the penguin should see, and they traveled down to the islands where the wolf had originally come from. Nervous, the penguin traversed the islands to the forest-like area, where numerous different creatures she had never seen before traveled around the grassy forest. The skua directed her to a bay near the frozen water, where a shadow could be seen lying on the ground. It was the wolf. The two quickly approached the wolf and examined the shattered body of the wolf, who had claw marks deep into his side and on his face. He was awake, gazing endlessly into the horizon with blood gushing out of his sides. His paws were bleeding as well, with jagged rocks in his paws and another rock sticking out of the wound. The penguin quickly asked what had happened, and the wolf sadly mentioned he had deserved what had happened to him, as he discovered he was manipulated by a fake moon to talk with the other wolves. The wolves rejected him and tore open his hip, leaving the wolf to limp to the rocky bay, where in a sad and delusional state of mind, he used the jagged rocks on the bay to cut into himself as punishment for following the false moon and being such a loner. Tears rolled down the penguin's eyes as she started to push the wolf into the water, trying to wash out the wounds, to which the wolf said it was too late for him. The penguin angrily denied what the wolf had said and continued pushing him into the water, intent on saving his life. And save his life she did. As the wolf entered the water, his wounds washed clean, and the rocks removed themselves from the wounds, causing the wolf to be able to walk again. As the penguin finished washing him, she pushed him to the shore and asked if the wolf felt well, to which he shook his head to confirm. The penguin smiled contentedly and started to push the wolf once more, to his confusion. She claimed that he is going home, the home where he was meant to stay that had animals that accepted him, in the Arctic. The wolf smiled faintly and slowly got up as the penguin pushed him, with the two walking toward the Arctic. The skua flew by overhead, smiling as she looked down at the wolf and the penguin, traveling side by side back toward the Arctic with smiles across their faces. As they made it to the snowy land, the wolf turned to the penguin and nervously stated, "Penguin, I'm glad I got the chance to meet an amazing friend like you." The penguin smiled and hugged the wolf, in which she responded, "Wolf, I'm glad I met you too." And thank you guys very much for listening to that story there. That was a story I wrote about 4 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago. That was to a friend of mine that I really cared about back then. Suffice to say, not that much a lot has changed since then. I'm still getting emotional just kind of reading through that there for you guys, because I know there was a lot of typos when I went through it. There was a lot of editing mistakes. It was when I first started learning more about the creative writing process there and becoming an author itself. But that story just still rings very true to me. Of course, I'm the wolf, of course, that's the symbolism there. The person, the former close friend of mine is the penguin. The skua is another friend of ours at the time. All these, I love the idea of symbolism in stories. Symbolism is so good and so nice, and I love putting it into my stories I write. I'm getting too emotional here, goodness. It's just nice to reflect here. I really hope you guys enjoyed the story. I know it's probably not one of the better stories I've ever written. I looked back through my portfolio of just short stories I've written for not just other people, but also myself, some poems I wrote, even the 2+1 novel I'm writing right now, and heck, that 2+1 novel is way better than this story. But it's nice to go back and reflect on what work I've done previously. This was such a big story in my career when I was writing, when I first started writing, because it got me this motivation to write stories that would make people smile. And for my former friend, when I gave it to her just to cheer her up after she was going through some hard times, and kind of me expressing how I really enjoy friendships, because I don't really have too many of them. I have a few, and I really appreciate them here, but back then I didn't have too many. And I'm sorry, I'm just gushing and reflecting. And I I want it to be genuine, like my reaction to reading through it again for the first time in 3 to 4 years. Like, it. Even though I know a lot has changed, I know a lot of bad stuff has happened. Like, I'm still super appreciative of the story and the friends that I have, and I'm glad this was the story that made me really want to write. I'm glad it made her day when I wrote it, and man, it was it was good times back then. Goodness, I'm becoming an emotional wreck here. I'm doing this all in one take here. I'm not editing any of this right out. Like, there's any silence and whatnot. Like, it's just me just gushing. Like, oh my gosh, I'm glad that was my first story that really just kind of made me want to become more of a writer. You know, of course, like I said, she's a former friend. What if she's even watching this? Like, the person who this is about knows 100% that this is her. If she watches it, she probably hates my fucking guts. That's perfectly fine, because after everything you've put me through, yeah, whatever. It's okay. It's okay. I don't hold grudges. It's okay. But yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed the story. I don't know what else to say. I'm getting so teared up right now. Oh, so many good memories, and they're all gone. But so many tough memories too, you know. I don't know where I'm going with this. This has been recording for almost 4 minutes of just me rambling on, so I'm sorry if that's annoying to you guys. But once again, I hope you guys really enjoyed the story. If you guys want me to post more of my stories here, or like read something else, I've told I've been have a good voice for reading. I don't know. That's up to you guys. But I'm totally down to show and read more of what I've wrote in the past and where I am now. I'm not going to be reading my 2+1 writing, mind you. I mean, that's planning to become like an actual book someday down the line. But if there's something else you guys want me to read or anything and just kind of use my voice, I'm perfectly fine with that. Other than that, once again, I can't say this enough. I really hope you guys enjoyed it here. If you didn't, that's okay. It's not one of my better writings, but I had to start somewhere. So, but with that, I do thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you again soon. Peace.